Well, hello everyone. This is Carlos Camacho. I was speaking to someone and I asked them, have you listened to my YouTube talks? And they said, yeah, but it's too podcasty. And I said, what does that mean? They go, there's this thing called podcasts that you just talk and people listen. I go, really? So I looked into it. I had seen the word before when I got into Spotify and iTunes and all that. And wow, I'm hooked. I've been listening to a couple of podcasts and really I can see the beauty of it and how we can actually use our imagination to project some of those ideas that the people on the other side of the podcast are talking about in order to create the images in our head. So as far as I'm concerned, it's far easier and better than using video because the listener also is using a great part of their imagination, just like reading. And this podcast, my podcast, Private Universe, is going to be about talking to people, everyday things. We've already done a couple. My first podcast was just a little bit of a trial, really. I wanted to see if actually these people put it up on Spotify, and they did. Funny enough, I thought they would have heard it and go, wow, this is terrible. Let's not put this up. But they did. So that's a 3-minute talk on psychology, or the introduction to psychology, and I used a voice like this over a song that a good friend of mine and I wrote. So it's a very nice, maybe cheesy song in the background. And so I left it there. I'll probably take it off, so it's not going to be there for long. My second podcast was with my son, and we talked about the review, actually, of the grand final, the rugby league grand final, which we didn't really talk about. That's the title of it, but we ended up talking about the drummer from Def Leppard and a few other things like Cricket Australia and life. And other than that, I'm going to have people talk here about just common things. As far as I'm concerned, some of the most interesting stories I've heard have come from people that aren't very well known, or actually aren't known at all. I do this as a job. I listen to people all day about their problems. I'm a psychologist. I do deal a lot with common day issues and not so common as well, but it's just so fascinating. I can see why Dr. Lecter, Hannibal Lecter, was so interested in listening to Clarice's stories. He was confined to solitude pretty much, apart from that guy next to him who would masturbate and scream all night. But apart from that, he was pretty much on his own, and no wonder when Clarice came in, he would exchange knowledge for her stories, and I can see why you get hooked on it. So I thought this would be a great way in Private Universe to share some of those stories anonymously and also discuss things that are worthwhile, like mental health, love, relationships, travel, entertainment, and of course comedy. We need comedy in our life, or else it becomes too boring. That's why some of the writers I love, like Nietzsche and Schopenhauer and Camus, and even from before, probably some from the pre-Socratics that didn't take themselves too seriously, like Heraclitus. All these guys were pretty funny, and despite them giving an account, and a deep account of what life is and what their version of events is, there was also a little bit of humor, and I think that makes it all worthwhile. So today I'm going solo, just a bit of a chat to tell you that things are coming, good things are coming. And aside from that, I've already recorded 2 of my best friends and very interesting people on Saturday night. We're using a lot for another podcast, which is a bit more structured, but some of that information we recorded for 12 hours at my friend's house. We shared a couple of drinks and we discussed quite a few things. In the end, got out of hand, of course, because the night got late, the glasses got emptier. So in a way, it got a little bit out of hand, but in a good way, because some of the best stuff we talked about was later on. And that's the stuff I'm going to use for this podcast, because it definitely can't be used for the other podcast, because as I said, it's going to be very structured, and where this one isn't. And so that I'm going to be editing this week, and I'll be putting some snippets of that. But today I thought would be a great opportunity to talk about a little bit about the podcast and the things that we're going to be doing. Everyone has their journey. When you watch a movie and nothing happens, it could be pretty boring. So I always believe that the best stories are those that there's lots of twists, and what better than life to provide that. Suddenly there's a spanner in the works and we have to make do. That happens to all of us. Rich, poor, different colours, different cultures, different times, because as far as I can see, within human civilization, people have been struggling with questions that still haven't been answered, but their lives have been filled with these ups and downs that make the movie interesting. I have heard many over 25 years working as a psychologist, and on top of that, I love talking to people socially, a bit like Dr. Hannibal Lecter. I like my Chianti too, but I haven't started eating people yet, which is probably something I might want to do in the next decade of my life. As far as I'm concerned, this time around, in this decade anyway, I'll limit myself just to listen. There are people, though, that would taste quite nice, I suppose. But anyway, aside from that, it's the making, the creating, the journey, I suppose, that is worthwhile in these things. And I find people that have been successful in some areas probably don't concentrate on the final result. I've always have, and I think that's why I fell short creatively anyway in many areas of my life. I think as a young man, I focused too much on the end product, and now I find that I have the experience, not the knowledge, but just the experience of being able to take a step back and just create for the sake of creating. And hopefully, if at least one person gets something out of it, that's enough for me. But as far as I'm concerned, just doing this, plugging in this mic and watching the Cubase file just tick on and seeing the waves of my voice being recorded visually as well, because I can see it now with digital. And then I'm going to go in and mix it a bit, gate it, as we call it in the industry. We gate the file, which pretty much means that you'll hear my voice and then nothing, but not as bad as that. It'll be my voice and then fade into silence. So you don't hear a lot of the breathing. Then I'll probably compress it, limit it, as they call it. We use a limiter in order for it to sound a little bit more compact, but also to increase the volume. Because once you play it on your earphones or on your phone, on your computer, even on your stereo, you'll be surprised how low it is, though when I'm recording it sounds so high in my earphone. So we limit it, and then I'm going to master it, and that's going to increase the volume even more. And so once a month, the Margarita Hour, sport. Once a month, a guest. I've already got someone lined up for this week, and I'll have him on the podcast for next week. When I have someone on here talking about themselves, some people may or may not like it or even understand it, but it is their universe and that's where they live. That we all have our own secrets, and it's larger than what we think. And therefore, it's almost as if we are walking around with our own universe, and within us, our life becomes totally encompassing of many things. And it's not only what people see of us. People see a person, and the person they see is limited by their senses, of course. We carry within us many, many secrets and many experiences that even if we wanted to, we can't relay them to anybody else. We could spend our life writing about it and still not be enough, because the experience of writing itself would be another experience that you wouldn't be able to put down on paper as well. Every moment in life ticks on, and therefore the way we carry ourselves and what people see of us is very, very different. And I know that's not revolutionary, but it's very important to understand, I think, and remind ourselves, if we already have got to the point that we understand diversity, that everyone is a universe in a way, and some people do things that we don't understand. They might even be so-called bad things, because obviously that entails a certain concept of morality and ethics, which we all carry as well. So in order to avoid those terms, those generalized terms, let's just say that they might do something we don't understand or do not accept. Even then, suppose their private universe took them towards that. It might have been a bad decision out of character, but it might have been a conscious decision to do that, even it was against what other people might find as accepting. And therefore, that person will need to live with that, of course. But my interest is what brought that person to make that decision. That's where the interest is, because if it's a person without a mental issue and without an intellectual disability, then It's a person who can rationalize relatively well and is not dragged by their mental health or the limitations of their brain. So therefore, they've made a bad decision, a terrible decision that we don't accept. We may even find extremely offensive, but they made it. And that's what interests me, as not only as a psychologist, more as a human being, the things that we do, and that person is very similar to us, and that in a way is relatively scary, I suppose, that we're all in the position that we can make grand mistakes in lives or make bad decisions at a time where we feel under pressure or we just break down. And I think starting that leap from, if you like to use another generalized word, normality to that abnormality, from one state of consciousness that you're just living in society like a normal person or like following the herd, as Friedrich Nietzsche would say, and then suddenly you decide to do something totally radical. Sometimes it happens one moment to the next. I understand that a lot of the times this happens as a process, and it's structured and planned. I'm interested in what happens from that moment when you take that leap, a conscious one, or it may well be an unconscious one, if you like, to use a Freudian term. We slowly fall into a decision that we ourselves don't know about. And then, in a way, it's a little bit too late to backtrack, so we continue with it. And we might come up with many reasons or even excuses, justifications, if you like, to reach that point that we could have changed. And believe you me, my friends, we are all going to be in a situation in our lives, if we haven't already have been, and if you haven't been, that means you haven't lived your life fully, that you have made a bad decision. In hindsight, most of the decisions we make that we do not like are because we have the benefit of analyzing it later on. And if we could go back into that time, we would do things so much differently. That's where I think the secret is, being able to, in a way, transcend time, to be able to go forward a few years' time before you make that decision and say, how am I going to feel about this decision? And then making it accordingly to that consciousness, making that decision on how I'm going to feel about this. For me, that's a very interesting concept, because obviously we can't do this all the time. We're not robots. We feel, we have emotions, and therefore we are all going to make decisions that hopefully we don't regret, but at least we use as a learning opportunity in order to better ourselves, and therefore try to analyze, and not so much kick ourselves for making these bad decisions, but just analyze the situation and say, okay, this is what I've done, this is what I should have done. The next time I'm in that situation, how am I going to remind myself that I'm in this situation so then I don't choose the bad option? I think that's where it is. That's where it is. And a lot of the things that we're going to talk about with guests is going to be those decisions, those big ones that really changed and forged their life in a way that wouldn't have happened if those decisions weren't made. And I can guarantee you there's going to be a lot of bad ones. There's going to be some good ones too. And they're interesting as well. In a way that we call it luck, those lucky decisions where we could have gone here and we go there and that took us to a wonderful place. The bad ones we remember because we have a thing called regret, guilt, if you like, and that is another subject altogether. But we feel a lot of guilt, and therefore the bad decisions seem to be a lot more powerful than the good ones. But we cannot take anything away from good decisions. Those good decisions that we have made in life, we need to pat ourselves on the back, because it's not easy to make a good decision a lot of the time, especially in the world that we live now. And therefore, it's important to decide not only to analyze the bad decisions, but also the good ones we have had. Hopefully, with the guests I have on Private Universe, that's some of the things that we're going to be doing. And I think for those listeners, it's going to help also provide a bit of a plan, a structure, if you like, a certain way of looking at things, because we don't have time in the modern world to discuss these things and to hear how other people have done it. It's very interesting to see and to hear, be in front of someone, not a script, not an actor, real life person who has gone through many, many situations that others may have crumbled and have been able to not only succeed or not only get through them, but to flourish. all animals will do anything to survive, even play dead, hide, fight to the death. Yet we contemplate suicide because we can't bear a day of living without hope, without having a certain sense of optimism for our future. Because we understand that death is imminent, and therefore that changes everything. It makes us temporal beings, and the decisions we make in our lives, the good ones and the bad ones, become extremely important because there's no time, there's not much time to change these things. One bad decision can set us back a lot. And so hopefully, my friends, in Private Universe, we'll be listening to many stories, the ups and downs in life. More importantly, sharing how we've all been able to continue living and being optimistic of this wonderful planet and the human race. With that, my friends, I'll leave you. I will talk soon. From Private Universe, Carlos Camacho says goodbye.